Please welcome our very own devil in a blue dress, Sarah-Tai Black.
Hello. Lydia was like, no spoilers, and I was like, visual puns though? Can we do it? Hello. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Thank you to TIFF and TIFF Cinematheque for having me. I'm so happy to be back again for BlackStar in its second iteration. I think that BlackStar is such a really important program, and I'm really so glad that TIFF has invested in it for a second year. There's so many things that I really want to talk about tonight in regards to our film that we're watching, but the only problem is talking in depth about this film in a certain way entails a lot of spoilers. So I won't be doing any of that, although the fact that I'm here introducing it is a bit of a spoiler. How many of you here tonight have seen Devil in a Blue Dress before? So you know what I'm saying, right? For those of you who aren't familiar with the film, it's based on pulp novelist Walter Mosley's first published work of the same name. Mosley was born to a Black father and a Polish-Jewish mother. He was raised in the Watts area of LA and worked as a computer programmer before his detective novels really took off. While I was reading up on Mosley, I discovered that Bill Clinton praised Mosley as his favorite novelist, which is like, I don't know, smash cut to Bill Clinton playing the saxophone. Then if you can get like the cultural landscape of the 90s, you know, and Mosley's place within it, it was a weird time. Bill Clinton is a bad man. I'm just saying. Much of Devil in a Blue Dress is really just textbook film noir. You know, a shadowy figure approaches the detective with a seemingly straightforward case that has more dimension than meets the eye. Soon he's forced to work multiple angles and sort out who, if anyone, he can trust. Various parties, you know, cops, politicians, femme fatales, try to use him for their benefit. I think where Devil in a Blue Dress is unique, though, is both in the novel and the film adaptation, is with its homage to the kind of LA-based noirs of the 40s, that the fact that it also really imparts this, with force and depth, this reality of racial and social segregation of the time, which was, you know, at that time very alive and well. So a large part of this is also due to the source material at hand. In his writing, Mosley really took on noir in its whole entirety, and he created these really self-referential noir worlds with characters whose names alone, you know, Easy Rawlins, Dwight Albright, Daphne Monet, you know, let you know exactly where you stood while you were reading them. Historically speaking, more than anyone else, these worlds were created by Raymond Chandler, whose novels that I'm sure that many of you are familiar with because of the fact that they were adapted into the great classic noirs of cinema history, you know, Our Big Sleeps, Our Double Indemnities, The Long Goodbye, Strangers on a Train. Literally, I could go on because there were so many of them. It's like Marvel for like the 40s. Film noir really emerged during this time, during World War II, and, you know, continued through most of the 50s. And it really always had this important potential to explore political and social issues of the day within the form of these kind of complex, sometimes not as complex, crime plots, the best of which kind of delved into the dark machinations of politics, which were both high and low. And I think Mosley in his writing really takes on this historicized mode of storytelling and all of the conventions that come with it. And he almost kind of turns it in on itself in as much as he underscores with this kind of full cognizance of what he's doing, the potential of film noir to draw into question the culture of its time. And with Devil in a Blue Dress, I think that really is, when you distill it down to its base form, those of you who haven't seen it don't quite know what I'm saying, but those of you who have know what I'm saying, it really distills down to this idea of the anxieties around protecting whiteness and the sanctity of whiteness, you know, and in many ways that is very much like the exact same cultural underpinning that heralded and celebrated and brought forth like film noir proper way back in the day, albeit here in a little bit of a different direction in terms of identification. In talking about both the book and the film, with all its different kind of contextual elements, it's very easy to forget when this film was actually made, especially with it now being considered part of the neo-noir canon. It came out in 1995. It premiered here at TIFF in 1995, so we've come full circle. Right in the midst of the kind of 90s neo-noir kick, which saw a spate of both period and contemporary set noirs released, like The Last Seduction, LA Confidential, Memento, and Bound. Again, like noir proper, there are so many, and I love them all. Carl Franklin, who directed Devil in a Blue Dress, was himself part of this crime noir wave with his previous feature, One False Move. Yeah. In many ways, Franklin kind of comes straight out of this tradition of very straightforward narrative cinema that you can kind of trace back and reach back to the likes of Howard Hawks and John Huston, but obviously, with this realistic, what some people might call social consciousness, but I think what is better referred to as Black consciousness, that gives his movies an even greater depth and relevance. As a genre study, Devil is, I think, very compelling, very sharply made. It's very raw and direct in its praxis. Franklin navigates his audience through 1948 LA with these unobtrusive tracking shots and nods to the genre's roots with a few classical touches like slow dissolves, superimposing images to convey thought. It's very nice how film noir proper and 90s neo-noir kind of meet in the middle of we're a little cheesy, And I think what really gives this film its extra dimension is its matter-of-fact portrayal of this idea of a dual LA. It depicts a white cultural underbelly that wouldn't be out of place in another neo-noir like Chinatown, but at the same time it foregrounds with this respect and care and lived-in empathy the Black community where Easy, the film's hero played by Denzel Washington, makes his home. The conflicts of the central mystery here kind of grow from this intertwining of these two cities, which, at the end of the day, share much of the same space but have markedly different boundaries. It's obviously very indebted to LA Noir, as I've been saying, but Franklin's film is as much a nostalgic treatment of Black life in the immediate post-war years. It really, when you think about more of its context, which comes through more in the book, it examines the kind of fledgling suburban communities of South Central and Compton that later became both kind of victimized and forgotten during moments of violence and unrest. Easy is figured in the film as a Texas man. He's one of the many Black migrants who moved from the Deep South to LA immediately post-war in search of better opportunities in terms of real estate and blue-collar work. And I think that really gives the film such a vivid portrait of everyday Black life during this time, especially as it's a period that's not often considered by film's history. And it makes such a dramatic connection between the hope and the space-making and the being that's evident on the streets of Easy's LA and the despair that is kind of the inevitable follow-through of, institutionalized racism and generational trauma that is captured on those same streets in the film some 40 years later. When I personally think of South Central LA on film, it's not Devil in a Blue Dress that comes to mind first. It's films like Boys in the Hood, Set It Off, Menace to Society. I think that these films, while important in their own right, really make up the majority of, the cultural imaginary of what it means to be Black and live in LA. And, the stories that they tell are very much related to and generationally drawn out of this cultural moment that both Franklin and Mosley are exploring. And, it's a shame that this film isn't talked about more in that context, although a lot of this kind of critical avoidance is to do with the fact that the film was released on the weekend the OJ verdict was released. So I can't see, a nation in the stronghold of that, media circus being particularly engaged with a film like Devil in a Blue Dress, which deals explicitly with race and color and crime from a Black perspective. We all remember the Time magazine cover where OJ is darkened. Not a good look. But anyways, prior to filming, Franklin scouted out locations for the film. He found a 4-block section of Main Street in downtown LA that could be redressed for the period city scenes. But what I think is important here is that Easy's neighborhood had to be entirely recreated since the original community had long since been destroyed in the Watts riots. He consulted documentary images of Watts, particularly the LA Public Library, God bless libraries, keep them open, sponsored a photography project called Shades of LA, a search for visual ethnic history. And he used that in order to kind of reconstruct the feel and design of the setting on film. All of that is kind of to say there's a real great tragedy to this film, and I think it's one that doesn't really have a lot to do with, the mass corruption that surrounds the characters and everything to do with the more far desperate kind of battle cry for simple identity in all ways of the words, both on screen and off. It's a very typical noir sentiment to have the past inflect and intersect with the present in these really disarming and almost chilling ways. But here, with these characters and these stories and these storytellers and these settings, I think that idea has been taken to like a whole new, almost meta level. Franklin has said that ultimately Devil in a Blue Dress is about the American dream, which is something that filmmakers often say when they're hyping their films, and very often it is not an accurate description of the films. But in this case, I really do believe that it's not just hype. So I really hope that you enjoy this film tonight. Thank you all for coming up.